Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and a lot to talk about tonight. JJ McCarthy, very interesting at the podium today. Fairly light injury report for the Vikings, but not so much for the Green Bay Packers. We'll talk about all of that. As always, the show presented by FanDuel, but there's plenty of space this evening for your questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, emotions, reactions to the Vikings, where they stand at 4-6, and what is still to come, which is where our FanDuel question of the day comes from. I'm going to ask you that first, then we can dive deep into what McCarthy had to say today. So the FanDuel question of the day is this: the Vikings are 6.5 point underdogs to the Green Bay Packers and Lambeau. Have you given up on picking them to win? Have you given up on the results of the season, or could they drag you back in with a victory over the Green Bay Packers? Tweeted out a chart today that their chances to make the playoffs would go up to 13% with a win over the Green Bay Packers. So you're telling me there's a chance. I think you can use that meme when we get to this point. But a win over the Packers, would that change things for you? They are 6.5 point underdogs there on FanDuel. So interested in your answers there. But let's start off by talking about JJ McCarthy. Something that I noticed today in him talking at the podium was that he was very honest with everyone, with answering questions, as he always is. But I also think that it sounded to me like he's honest with himself. And we've heard Kevin O'Connell talk a lot about the different things that McCarthy has to work on with the mechanics. I feel like, am I a quarterback coach now after listening to JJ McCarthy? And he might need a new one. JJ McCarthy, analysis from the head coach. And there are a few people in this world who know more about quarterback play than Kevin O'Connell. So if you've been watching and listening to his press conferences, his breakdowns, talking about mechanics, and today he was breaking down how you deal with messy and muddy pockets. And he kind of snarked about Tom Brady's 40 time, but said, when it came to moving to the right places in the pocket and getting set and being able to go through your progressions, despite having a guy, breaking in from the right guard or getting through on a blitz or something. He talked about, how McCarthy's movements there don't need to be quite as aggressive. Like he could slide instead of maybe taking a big jump forward. And, he's talked about that posture in the pocket and, getting wide. And today he broke down the leg whip and saying it's not necessarily a bad thing, but the violence of the leg whip, can cause maybe too much velocity on the football, whereas maybe 80 to 85% velocity on some of these throws would get the job done. And so I feel like we've gotten this masterclass from Kevin O'Connell on how we should be watching quarterback mechanics. And now I kind of find myself watching every quarterback and going, I noticed that his posture was tall in the pocket. Like I am now the quarterback expert. But I think it's interesting that O'Connell has not shied away from that, and I don't think that JJ McCarthy has either. But today felt like a little bit of a different tone, because I think that every young player comes into the NFL thinking, I'm about to dominate. And, I don't really enjoy seeing people make fun of him, saying that the alter ego going out there is 9 and not JJ. And then, everybody's throwing that in his face now or whatever. It's like, come on, guys. Every one of these players who gets drafted, their expectation for themselves is that they are going to go out there and be great. I remember Cam Bynum one time, right after he got drafted, we were like, so, kind of what are your expectations, that kind of thing for early in your career. And Cam Bynum said, my expectations to be the greatest player of all time. And of course the room was like, okay, let's get you on the field first there, brother. But he said, no, I'm serious. Like that's where I set the bar for myself. That's my expectation. Like I'm going out there every day thinking that that's the goal that I'm chasing. So with someone like JJ McCarthy, you win a national championship. You rarely lose at any time in your life. And we asked him about it along the way. Hey, the NFL is going to be harder. You're going to lose more. You're going to go through adversity, all those things. But there's no explaining it really how that's going to feel and what that's going to be like when it actually happens. And the way that he seems to be dealing with it is to be honest with himself about these things that need to change. And even he talked about, and this is sometimes like where McCarthy will get made fun of for being honest. And, I don't know, when you win, everybody loves it. And if you don't win, everybody makes fun of you on the internet. So I guess that's how it's going to be. But he talked about, even being out walking the dogs and like thinking his way through these different reps. And I think that's why the Vikings believed in JJ McCarthy. And I don't know if I should say believed or believe when it comes to him. Certainly believed that he could come far enough with his mechanics, and then possibly still believe in JJ McCarthy after 5 starts, is that he can assess what he is doing and understand the coachable points. And now it's about whether he can apply them consistently or not. Because if he can, then he's going to turn a corner. And if he cannot, then no matter how coachable he is, it will not matter. And that is the unfortunate reality of how sports work. But McCarthy talking today about how he had to relearn the quarterback position differently than he had ever learned before, talking about rewiring things for the way he thought about playing quarterback. So some interesting comments. I want to bring you a few of them.
JJ, you talk about some of the stuff being new. Like, how hard is it to untrain your mind from 15 years of learning one way and now having to learn a different way?
It's really hard. You're rewiring neurological pathways, and that's not something that happens overnight. So just understanding and giving myself that grace, that patience that, I might not have it today, but it's something that I'm going to continue to strive after day, rep after rep, and get to the place where we all want me to be. And it just comes with all those reps, because, anything new, like tying your shoe, takes time. And, especially playing at the level of the National Football League, the urgency to it is something very important, but no matter what it is, it's going to take time.
I mean, I think that really captures it, right? That he himself has to be patient with himself. Otherwise, he's just going to get super frustrated and lose his confidence and so forth. But he also recognizes there that you're in the NFL and the grace that you're talking about doesn't really exist too much. The only plus side of this development with McCarthy is that they've gotten to a point at 4-6 where the expectations are now gone, and it's the weight of those is lifted. Now, that is not a good thing. Let's just be clear. That's not a good thing for the franchise or overall, or for if you bought tickets to a Vikings game. Like, those things are all bad. But for his own personal development, to not go week to week where everyone's saying you have to win this game this week or you are letting down the entire franchise. We've already gone past go with the competitive part of it and him being ready. So now it feels like he can focus on the fundamentals and the techniques and all the things, the feet and eyes and all the stuff they've been talking about, more so than going out and trying to win the game. And I wondered after last week, I wonder if this loss to Chicago, which essentially put a nail in the coffin of the Vikings' chances to make the playoffs, will help JJ McCarthy in some way, because there have been too many times in these games against the Ravens and against the Bears where it felt like he was feeling the entire pressure of the weight of the world on him and trying to make plays that were unnecessary, or trying to throw the ball, through his wide receiver's soul. Like, there were just times where it looked like JJ McCarthy is trying way too hard to carry all of that expectation with him. So again, not that I'm saying that that's a plus in any way, just that it might be a thing that ends up happening, that now you can talk about it in a way of these next 7 games are all about the progress from the fundamental elements. So focus on those and don't focus so much on trying to save a season that was on the brink against the Ravens and against the Chicago Bears. So he talked more about when it came to the things that he has to do better, things that he has to change.
It's, one to 3 little things that I need to change about my game that is going to make a huge difference in the outcome of every single drive in the game. So, yeah, I feel like it's really close, but it all comes down to the consistency of the fundamentals and the little details.
What are the 1 or 2 things you need to change?
I would say, just my posture, the way that I'm processing the defense in terms of I know what I'm getting, but let the rhythm of the play out. Don't be getting to that answer too quick because, it's a timing and rhythm of the concepts and the defenses. And just decision making, just understanding, the situation of the game, not just the concept that I'm trying to execute. Understand, like for instance, that first pick last game. It's 4 minutes going into half. We're on our own side of the territory, and just understand, what that risk factor should be, and go from there. So
I think you really get it when McCarthy talks about why they would have been sold on him. We will go through, I'm sure, 100 million times before it's all over, whatever way it goes with McCarthy, the decision to draft him, the Darnold, Rodgers, Daniel Jones, all that sort of stuff. But when you listen to McCarthy break down his own game and how he has a self-awareness about what he's been coached and about the situation that he made a mistake, and understanding how to process that, and here's what I should have done, and here's what I'm going to do next time. When you listen to him talk this way, you think this is really coachable stuff, right? And this is where I don't want to myself shut the door on JJ McCarthy. I think, I've seen people say, well, he's just like Zach Wilson. I don't know about that. I think if you went back and listened to some Zach Wilson press conferences around the same time, you would maybe feel a little bit differently about making that comparison. And I didn't cover Zach Wilson, so I can't say to an every single day what it sounded like, but there were a few times that I heard things that he said that felt like, I don't even think this guy realizes that he's playing poorly or that he's made mistakes. I don't think there is any awareness about this player whatsoever. And we've certainly seen that from a lot of guys through the years that didn't work out. It might be the number one thing that correlates with guys not getting better is a lack of self-awareness. And I was talking to Brian O'Neill actually for a story about Donovan Jackson today, but he said something that was really interesting. He said that when you're evaluating yourself, your own tape, you have to do it in an objective way where you look for the points where you have to get better and not be emotional about it, whether it's, embarrassed or overly excited that you made a good play. It's all about, getting those technical things correct time and time again. And if there's a mistake, then you have to fix it. And when you listen to McCarthy say, yeah, that on that interception, I need to understand the situation better. The question for all of this is when he talks about posture in the pocket. And I was watching a video from Tom Brady because I'm now like a Mr. How to Throw a Football guy. So I was watching one from Drew Brees. I was watching one from Tom Brady on YouTube about Tom Brady and how he throws the football, because I was very curious, well, what does Brady have to say about it? And that whole posture thing is really important. I mean, especially when we see McCarthy slide a little too far and get his feet too far wide, and then his front shoulder goes up and the ball flies away on him, especially when he's throwing to the left side. This is something Nate Tice pointed out on Twitter as well, with some of those fundamental elements. And so I think that what you hear there from McCarthy is, I understand. I know the way. I see the path. And the rhythm part of the offense, when you watch back the All-22, and I saw JT O'Sullivan's doing another breakdown, and just I pray for JT on this one, because the last one seemed to drive him pretty crazy. I think this one might be worse. But you can see where if you're running an out and up, if you're Jordan Addison, the ball has to be out before he's up. He is in this is just how fast the league is. And when you talk about the timing of everything, it's so important that he goes out, and as he's breaking, the ball needs to be in the air, and he needs to be turning as the ball is in the air, not already out of his break, turning upfield and then throwing it. Or you have to see Justin Jefferson running a deep cross. You have to see him breaking and the ball has to be released, not wait till he gets 10 yards on the guy. But those are college to the NFL things that a lot of quarterbacks struggle with. And it feels like McCarthy, when he's being taught those things, is processing them and understands them, but he has to go out and do it. And watching a quarterback try to develop himself in real time is painful, I think, for everybody watching. And sometimes you see flashes and you go, wow, why doesn't he just do that all the time? And so I think that if those two things did not exist, if we didn't see the self-awareness, the coachability from McCarthy, and if we didn't see the flashes from McCarthy, then I might be in the same camp as a lot of you who want to call it on him right now. But I can't get there because of that stuff. And he talked about, just for him, how new a lot of this really is, which I know what the reaction's going to be to, like, oh, now you're saying it's all new when before you were calling yourself not. I get it. But here's what he said.
It's very new. You know, coming in here, I was taught how to play quarterback in a very different way. And that's, you know, expected going into the league, going into any new team, any new system. But at the end of the day, you know, it was really just the injuries that I felt like, you know, kind of took away all those reps and the constant repetition to make those a habit and make them concrete, like KO talks about. But yeah, I feel like, you know, it's just the repetitions. You know, how many times could I go home and every time I take the dogs out, I'm getting, you know, 10 drops each time. Little things like that where you just keep building the reps.
I have a big dog, as some of you have seen, a greyhound, and he loves to circle around me. So if I was doing drops, I would just fall down on him. He doesn't understand space that humans need to stand up or walk or anything like that. So apparently JJ's dogs are maybe a little more well-behaved than my greyhound. But there again, you hear him talking about how he came in here and is asked to play quarterback differently than the past. Now, that is true for 100% of quarterbacks. If you play quarterback in the NFL like you did in college, you will be terrible. Like there's just no way to simulate it. The hashes being so far apart gives you tons of space to wait until wide receivers are running wide freaking open before you actually make your decision. All NFL offenses since Don Coryell was around are based on timing. I know I've seen this, you know, it's complicated. It's hard to get and things like that. I think that's probably true, that it takes a lot of work to get it. But I also think that has to be the case, or you probably just cannot operate. I remember Mike Zimmer talking about this, where he would get asked about college defenses and college offenses. Well, can you do this concept in the NFL? And he said, basically, the windows are too small. Like a lot of the things that happen in college, bubble screens is one of them, where the guys are just too fast. You'd love to throw a bubble screen all the time in the NFL, but they'll just tackle you. And so a lot of it has to be rooted in one guy moves one step and the ball has to be in a certain spot, but you have to believe it and you have to trust in it. And that's really hard to do at full speed. Justin Jefferson runs like 20 miles an hour. So you have to be really thinking about the ball going to a space that you don't see Justin Jefferson there or open yet. It's just hit it, trust it, release it, which is going to take time if he's going to get it. That's why this happened. Now, the bigger picture is you can't go back in time if you're the Vikings. You can't go back to the offseason and know that he was not going to have this down. And when he's talking this way, I think it is admitting how far behind he really has been. And I don't think there's any denying it. But I think previously it was like, oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then this last game, there were so many instances of making mistakes when it came to the mechanics of it, that whether it's O'Connell or whether it's McCarthy, you've gone back to almost, this is square one. This is 7 games of quarterback development, and you're going to try to get him to grow as much as you possibly can. And that's the world that you have to live in right now, which is why I said, hey, keep putting it all on his plate and see how far he can get with that. So the fact that he has the self-awareness about him, I think is really, really important to trying to turn a corner. But also when you're talking like this, rewiring, and it's all very new, the one part where I do hesitate to say, oh, okay, well, all right, I guess we got to just readjust everything for ourselves, is the fact that he really is not a rookie. And the reps that were missed due to the injury are absolutely important. I mean, if you were trying to learn a new golf swing and you started learning it and then you broke your arm and couldn't swing a golf club for 6 months, and then you go out and you're like, how did I do that again? At the same time, footwork and all that stuff, it's all part of the learning process of the offense, which he started learning at the beginning of 2024 and had a lot of reps doing. And then OTAs, mini camp, off-season training camp, all those things. And now 5 games. And we're talking about it as if he just got here. This sounds like when it's rewiring and learning very new offense. I mean, this sounds like a rookie in his first mini camp, not somebody who's 5 weeks in and has expectations to win on their shoulders and needs to take enormous steps forward by the end of this year in order to prove to the team that, hey, it is him that needs to be the quarterback going forward. So it feels like we are so far away that in 7 games, it would be very hard to get to that point where we would all say to each other, it clicked and he got it. But if there is a little bit more consistency, then you could maybe start making a case. If you get some wins like this week against Green Bay and you build some confidence and he's not feeling down in the dumps talking about how he's got everything wrong at this point and he's rewiring and everything else, a lot can change in a couple of weeks in one way or another. The Packers and Seattle Seahawks also have the capability of breaking a young quarterback as well. They both have great defenses. They both have some of the best players in the NFL. These are 2 very, very, very vital weeks for JJ McCarthy and his development. So I guess you can read it one way or the other. You can read like, okay, I think this is good if you can understand what you're being coached and what you need to do, it gives you a better chance to go out there and do it. There have been plenty of young players before who had this attitude of like, oh, I got this. It's totally fine. And the coaches would be like, well, no, actually, you need to do X, Y, and Z. No, I'm good. This is all. I've always done this my whole life. I'm good. And those players fail 100% of the time. When it comes to learning the quarterback position, being open to listening to these things fundamentally that KOC is talking about, knowing what you need to do to get there, and it's just a matter of getting there, it gives you a better chance. Also did want to throw out there today, Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio, trying to get ahead of this thing, I think has already brought up Mac Jones. So people have asked me about that. I think that we are approaching the conversation about who will be competing for next year, but it's also November 19th, and we are a very long way away from the end of the season. Mac Jones sure makes sense. That would have to be a trade, but I can't really say much more about it. I mean, football is so crazy, right? Like so many things can change so fast that if we start talking about this like now, that conversation is going to change so much, and it could change for JJ McCarthy making huge strides forward. And then we're all having different opinions on him in 6 weeks, or it could go much worse. And we're all talking about, well, it's got to be who knows what for, the next option. So I don't want to quite go down that road just yet. In terms of the injury report, and then we'll get to your questions, comments, reactions to what JJ McCarthy had to say. Will Fries didn't practice today. That's worth keeping an eye on. Still no Jonathan Grenard. They could really use him. And that was it for the Vikings. Ryan Kelly is back, and the Vikings have a chance this week. They didn't say for sure that he's playing, but they have a chance this week with Ryan Kelly returning, practicing in full, to have their entire offensive line for the first time all season, which is crazy. And Brian O'Neill, we were talking to him, and that was presented to him, and he kind of looked and went, wait, did we ever? No, we actually have never had our full starting offensive line. So that's at least an accomplishment there. And with Ryan Kelly, I will continue to say it's concerning. He's had such a great career. You worry about anybody who's had one concussion, multiple concussions. You really, really worry. It sounds like they've done a lot of work on this when it comes to the team, second opinions, changing helmets, using the Guardian cap. And then from here, this is a situation where you just, for my seat, just hold your breath. Like, I hope, man. I hope this is okay, because he's had a great career, and you don't want to see any other problems with Kelly. I mean, he loves football so much. I get it. And he's a great player, and he sure had it the first few weeks. Did not look like he had lost a step at all to me in those first couple weeks. So a potential on the field, a potential upgrade there for them, and major credit to Blake Brandel for the way he played over the last few weeks. On the Packers side, Carl Brooks, Nate Hobbs, Josh Jacobs, Quay Walker, all sitting out, and then a bunch of guys were limited in practice, so we don't have a good sense for that yet. Jacobs is the one to watch. Hot take, I think that they would be better without him. 3/4 of a Josh Jacobs is probably not going to be as good as a starter, so we will keep an eye on that to see if he is going to be starting in this game. And I think also sometimes they lean on him too much at times, where they believe in Josh Jacobs more than they should in the running game because he had such a good year last year. So let's get to your questions and comments. A reminder that FanDuel question of the day: the Vikings are 6.5-point underdogs on FanDuel to Green Bay. Would it change your mind if they won for the playoff run or the season being back on, or would you still be very skeptical? So we'll get to all your answers on that momentarily. All right, let's get into your questions, thoughts, and comments. I Shot You 99 says, how does KOC navigate the locker room confidence if JJ continues to struggle? I think it's too late to make a change at quarterback to make a difference, but could get so bad that there has to be a change. Or is it simply a case of suck it up and ride or die? I think it's that second one at this point. Now, if there's a different world here where, say that Carson Wentz comes back to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Say that the Vikings beat the Chicago Bears, and JJ's playing like that, and they're 6-4. And then you're halfway into the Green Bay game, and it's 6-3 Packers, and JJ has 3 interceptions and is 7 for 17 passing. I think if you're on that sideline, you're looking around going, Can we try John Wolford? Can we try Max Brosmer? Right? Like anything maybe to get this to work, because the defense is keeping you in the game and he's losing it for us. That went away last week. That went away with Devin Duvernay's kick return. We'll never forget it, my friends. Devin Duvernay's kick return, which Matt Daniels basically said that a child could have gotten 50 yards on that one with the size of the gap that was left by the Vikings return unit. That to me sent the discussion of, do you bench him? You got to do what's right for the veterans. Sent it swirling down the toilet. That's gone. If you were a team that was right there and you're a number 8 seed and you got to win 2 out of the next 3 and your quarterback is falling apart and you're winning a couple of games on Will Reichard's 60-yard field goals, and all of a sudden the turnover spigot comes back on, and oh wow, and this could still happen, I guess. It just seems very unlikely now. If they lose to Green Bay, then their percentage chance to make the playoffs is going to be truly on life support if it isn't already. You would have to win to get in the playoffs now 6 out of 7, and with 3 more games in the division and a trip to Seattle mixed in. And it's no guarantee that you beat the Giants. It's no guarantee you beat Dallas. That Dallas team played really well the other night. They have a great offense. Who's guarding CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens? And guess what? They're going to be at home, so they won't stay out till 7 a.m. partying or whatever the heck it was that happened to get them suspended for the first drive. So there's no guarantees that for any of these games that they're going to win. 6 out of 7 seems like a really, really tall task. If they threaten that, then maybe we're having that discussion. But I think everyone understands that whether it's, the captain who's 30 years old or rookies on the team. Like, they get it. You're 4-6. You just got to keep playing it out with JJ McCarthy and see where that takes you. Kurt Pluppy says, do you think Sean Payton was telling the truth after the draft when he said he artificially inflated McCarthy's value just to screw us and secure Bo Nix? I've thought that he's coping, but I've always thought he's coping. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's hard to tell with Sean Payton because he's such a trash talker that might be something he just sort of said, or maybe they put it out there, tried to leak it to, make the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings traded up one spot and didn't have to give up a whole heck of a lot. So it's not like they totally screwed the Vikings. The Vikings had a chance to draft either JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix in that spot. Would they have picked Penix? I don't know. Now Penix is seriously hurt, and that was a real concern when he was coming out in the NFL, the injuries. And that was the biggest knock on him, was the worry about the knees. And then here he is having a serious knee injury that could put him out for a lot of the offseason and, maybe regress his where he's gotten to at this point, which is, pretty good, but not as far as maybe they wanted him to be so far. So let's say that they wanted Penix. He gets drafted by the Falcons. Okay, so you've got a choice between McCarthy and Nix, and Kevin O'Connell went to meet with both players, and he decided on the guy that he wanted to go with. I know the entire organization went on these trips, and there was a lot of discussion, and it was not just Kevin O'Connell, but for me, he's the guy that's making that call the same way as Sean Payton. If Sean Payton said no, then the Broncos would not have drafted Bo Nix. I guarantee you that. I feel the same way about O'Connell. So he picks JJ McCarthy and not Bo Nix, goes against the college statistics, but goes with the younger kid, maybe more moldable to his offense. Maybe felt like the downfield passing in the intermediate areas would be a lot better with JJ McCarthy. I think that we could still see that, the potential for how he throws the football. Well, they need him to stop throwing it so hard. You could see the difference in how the ball travels through the air between the two quarterbacks. I mean, I think with Bo Nix, he has not been that great of an intermediate passer. A lot of it's short, a lot of it's avoiding sacks, and then every once in a while you're trying to hit something over the top, which he has not been particularly great at. I don't know that Bo Nix in this offense looks the same way. It's really hard to tell. But I think that Denver knew that they were not going to get any of the top five, and they were going to have to take whoever if they were picking a quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like just Sean Payton being Sean Payton to me. But, Bo Nix has turned out to be, I think, a very good quarterback, but not by any means a great quarterback. It sort of looks like Rex Grossman with the 05 Bears to me, where you got a pretty good athlete who can make some plays and you're trying to avoid mistakes and you have an unbelievable defense. And this year that can win in the way that the NFL has shaped the environment. But if that's the maximum of what Bo Nix can be, I think the Vikings looked for a guy with the higher ceiling, and that's why they picked JJ McCarthy. But, I'm sure they had plenty of reasons of why they decided to do that. But, Sean Payton's going to be Sean Payton. Look, they're 9-2. They could say whatever they want. I know that was said a while ago, but they're 9-2. Goofster in an away game in the Packers. So Vikings by double digits. Yeah, you're right. JJ McCarthy has been better in the away games so far. 27-13. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings were able to win a game like this because, the line there for sure is based on the quarterbacks. Jordan Love at this point in his career is very much better than JJ McCarthy. But the rest of the two teams, I don't think that's the case. I think if you go position by position, who's got the better offensive line, the better backfield, the better receivers, D-line is close. If Grenard plays, it's close. Secondary is probably to the Packers, but overall the Vikings defense is still very good. I mean, and the kicker, the Vikings do have a better kicker. Like every other position, you've got a pretty good case that the Vikings are right there or better than the Packers. So you could see it. And anytime it's the division games, that's the thing. The division games are they're tight and sometimes they're weird. Like we saw from last week, but even, with Detroit, the other team so well inside and out. O'Connell and Jeff Hafley have gone against each other a couple of times now. Flores has gone against Jordan Love and mostly gotten the better of Jordan Love overall, which gives you a chance. So, I mean, I could see it. T Vikes, I think it will feel like a step in the right direction. That's all this season can be the rest of the way. Stepping stones in the right direction. KO sounded a bit dejected today. Am I wrong? So I was trying to think of a way to describe the tone because it has changed a little bit throughout the season. At one point, there was a little more of a defensive, I think, tone about the whole thing. But I think that had more to do with people suggesting that there was a soft benching or something like that. I don't think they particularly love that, but just in general, I thought maybe dejected isn't quite the right word. But did he have the same energy as if they had beaten the Bears? No. I think everybody took that loss very, very hard because the Bears game represented the final frontier of you can make a season of this. You can chase the playoffs. And if they had gotten a win there, I think that their percentage to get in the playoffs would have gotten to like 30-something%. But you get there and you start talking yourself into it. If McCarthy makes one more play, if a receiver doesn't drop a pass, if you stop a kick return, then, all right, yes, there's certainly wild concerns about McCarthy and his mechanics, but you're still in the race. You could still coach it up. You could still have some defensive game plans, get a win you're not supposed to, and you're right in this conversation. Nobody in the vaunted NFC North is perfect. Chicago's probably not even good, and Detroit, every time they play a good team, they lose. And, Green Bay is battered, and like you start talking yourself into that. That's very exciting, I'm sure. And then you give up the kick return, give up the field goal, and the wind goes right out of those sails. And I thought that's how I would describe Kevin O'Connell today, like not dejected as necessarily of just the wind went out of the sails last week, and it's hard to have the same vibe, I guess, when you're coming into that press conference after that happens, after you get to 4-6, as you would if you had gotten a win there. So, Ron says their fate was decided against the Bears. I mean, that's pretty much how it feels. It's not over till it's over, but that's really how it feels. And I think that's when you saw, O'Connell's reaction on the sideline after the kick return. I mean, everybody kind of felt it right there. Like this is one of those not to be type of seasons. The turnovers have gone away. The kid wasn't far enough along. The early season injuries, the whole Carson Wentz thing, and then you get a chance to get it back on the rails, and this happens. It's been a tough one. Kerpluppy says, can I say I've become a big Tom Brady as an announcer fan? KOC mentioned gaining value from meeting with him today. I feel like him having feel like a guy like him mentoring the league isn't a bad thing. So I don't see the broadcasts and until the playoffs when the Vikings aren't in it, because, I'm at the game. So the guys who are doing noon games, I don't see them. But then even the 4:00 games, I'm usually in the press box still working, whether it's doing the post-game podcast or writing. So I'm watching most of it on mute. And then I hear, Tirico and Chris Collinsworth and Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. They're pretty much the only ones I see all year unless the Vikings are playing on Monday. So I've had a very small sample. I liked Tom Brady last year in the playoffs. I thought he was very insightful in the playoffs. The Washington game against Detroit was probably some of the better color analysis I've heard from him in the small sample, but I like where he's at as a color analyst. I think he's always going to stay away from being overly critical, but at some point last year, at least this is from what I've just seen and how it's been talked about, it sounds like he kind of got the picture of if you just explain stuff that you see, it's probably more than most people see. So just do that. And I think he's gotten pretty good at that. I also think that the world just wanted to hate Tom Brady because he took Greg Olson's spot. And that's not actually Tom Brady's fault that the network made that decision. But Greg Olson, from what I've heard, is really excellent too. I just don't have big takes on broadcasters because I don't hear them a whole heck of a lot. So I'm glad that Brady was good. Last Samurai says the Vikings would have won both the last two games with at least average QB play. The fact that McCarthy can't even come close to that is downright sad. I can't believe we let Sam go for this. Right. And, that is, I think, the feeling that is lingering over everybody. When you talk about anybody's body language, anybody's energy, that kind of thing in the organization, it does feel just kind of sad that this did not work out the way that they expected it to. You go through training camp. I think when they got to the end of training camp, and this is why every year I talk about, hey, these are the years that I was right, and here's are the years I missed. This is a miss for me, and I think it's a miss for a lot of people of how it looked coming out of training camp, because this team to me looked like they should win 11 games. And that's how many I picked them to win, and I will end up being wrong. Last year, I think I picked maybe 10, and I looked genius because most of the league was picking 6 for the Vikings. But that was also based on training camp, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong, I guess. But I think that this team and the players and the leadership had very high expectations, and I know that the fans did, and I know that we, after seeing them in training camp, set the bar very high. And to have the feeling, and this is where it's hard, this is where, this is the unfortunate truth about the NFL, is that it always comes down to the quarterback. The reason why the Jaguars are willing to pay Trevor Lawrence $50 million is because if you have below average to poor quarterback play, you will just lose and lose and lose. And I think that he's not very good, but sometimes you'll see that of how could they pay this quarterback? And look, we went through this with Kirk, right? Who are you going to get if Kirk isn't your quarterback? And, my always answer was, well, you're really kind of winning 7 to 9 to 10 games each year. So, I guess this doesn't really change a lot if you fail with a young quarterback. And I would stick with that failing with a swing is still better than being stuck in purgatory. But you could see why teams choose purgatory. You could see why Dallas says we would rather pay Dak Prescott because, man, if we move on from him and draft the wrong guy, everybody gets fired, or in Jerry Jones's case, he just, feels bad or whatever. But in most organizations, people get fired if you end up drafting the wrong quarterback, which we still don't know yet about JJ McCarthy, but you see how the line played better. The running backs were good. The receivers were open. The defense did its best. And with average quarterback play, you end up going 2-0 and you're 6-4 and you feel really good. Is it too much to say that they win both of those games with healthy Carson Wentz the way he had played early in the season? I think they probably do. And that's hard to deal with if you're in that locker room, or, I guess if you had high expectations for fans of thinking that this team was going to be good, because it really does come down to this position did not play well enough and was not ready to take this on, but they thought he was going to be. There's no real way to know until you get out there, which doesn't take any of the criticism off them, but that's just the truth, is you really don't know. And there's so many examples of that throughout NFL history where, do you think Dick Vermeil knew that Kurt Warner was going to win the Super Bowl? Of course not. The 49ers tried to talk Tom Brady into coming back in 2023 and playing for them because they didn't know about Brock Purdy. So that's how it always is. But if you miss, especially when, Sam Darnold plays as well as he has, not last week, I know no one needs to tell me he was bad last week and in the playoffs. I'm very aware, but I think if you were going back with these results, you would do something different. Yep, I agree with that. Let's see. Ben says, I'd at least like take the Vikings with the points. Look who the Packers have lost or almost lost to. Not great teams. JJ has somehow played better on the road. The Packers banged up, and this team loves to zag. Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, right when we think it's the Godfather 3 thing, right? Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. They have a way of doing that over the years. Vikings with the points would be my pick 100%. The Packers are not blowing people out. And I think McCarthy, with all this discussion about the fundamentals and everything else, this feels like a lock-in type of week. Feels like it gets some things together kind of week. But even if they score 17 points, they might have a chance to win. just with the overall ineptitude of the Packers offense. Jordan Love played really well last week, and they had to survive the Giants. I don't think this Packers team is very high right now. JP says Chris Sims had a helpful film breakdown on Unbuttoned. He has not given up on JJ. I don't think anybody should give up on JJ right now. It's the natural state of things in the conversation world, whether that is social media or on television. And I appreciate Chris Sims for being rational when it comes to that, to push as far extreme as you can, because that's what gets attention, right? If you have opinions that are kind of hovering in the middle, like think about, a spectrum, and they're hovering in the middle of, maybe you're slightly optimistic and you say, yeah, I want to see these next 7 games before I decide. Well, that doesn't move the needle. And maybe if you're slightly on the pessimistic side, you say, well, it just doesn't look very good and I'm really worried. Those opinions get drowned out by the extreme of, I know McCarthy will turn it around. Like the hell you do. I mean, you sound like a fool. And I think for most of my audience, you do, but that gets a lot of people going, gets the debate going, everything else. Or if you're on the other side of, I know McCarthy's a bust, it's over. Same sort of thing. It moves the needle, but it's not the right way to look at this. He is processing some things mentally at the line of scrimmage that I think are good. And he's making some plays with his legs that I think are good. He has the requisite arm strength to make throws that are extremely good. And he has shown touch throws at times that have been plus. And we came out of that game against the Lions of, hey, like all those tools were on display today. Now it's just about massaging those out and evening the inconsistencies out. And he didn't do that. And I wonder if even there was a little bit of, we beat the Lions, we're championship contender, like in the young JJ McCarthy mind, like even the 9 stuff, probably, and I have no problem with it, but in hindsight, like maybe a little bit much for one win, right? And they always talk about, hey, don't get too high, too low. And then it's one win and I'm 9, super quarterback. You're like, yeah, that sounds like a kid maybe a little too high. I don't know. I think when it comes to all of that, though, like we've seen the flashes of stuff that he could do. We've seen the intelligence. This is what I'm talking about today, the self-awareness that is really important for a young quarterback. There's things there to work with. And whether it comes down to, can you actually fix the accuracy? Can you actually fix the rhythm, the timing? I don't think any of us knows that. There's quarterbacks who have, and there's quarterbacks who haven't. And which is he more like? I brought up Alex Smith as a guy who did. Justin Fields is a guy who didn't. Justin Fields had a brilliant arm, but could never really see it, could never really make it work timing-wise. And he took a lot of sacks. McCarthy had been taking sacks. In this last game, he got rid of the ball more, although it was incredible protection. But Fields was a guy that's just a good example of someone who never could really figure out, and still hasn't, the timing of an offense. And the only time that it actually worked for him was in Pittsburgh when they kind of ran like a read option type of thing. So, with McCarthy, it's going to go one way or the other. He's as cringe as Rush, but the thing about Russell Wilson is that everybody loved it when he was winning and then hated it when he was losing, which will always be the case. And I give JJ McCarthy credit for never being afraid to be himself. When he's asked questions, that like he's going to give you the answers, and sometimes people are not going to like the answers, or they're going to pick on him or whatever else. Stuff like calling yourself 9, harmless to me. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying is like if he had gone out and won the next 2 games, have been awesome. People would have tattooed the written number 9 on their face. And if you think this is a joke, like the Naz Reid thing, people are actually tattooing Naz Reid's name on themselves. That's what happens when you win. If the Timberwolves are a 20-win basketball team, I promise you no one is tattooing anybody's name on themselves. So, was the whole Naz Reid thing kind of corny? Like, oh, everyone just likes saying the guy's name. Sure it was, but it's awesome and fun when you win. And when you lose, it all sounds ridiculous. So I wouldn't, I don't get into that too much. I think he should just be himself, and whatever works for him, works for him. Ben says KOC saying mechanics are good in practice. JJ doesn't have many NFL game reps. Let's see his this year and next and see if he gets the 10,000 reps required and start to carry it over to games. Well, so there's part of that I agree with, which is this will probably take a full offseason. And after the behavior of his quarterback coach, I suggest he stay in Minnesota and find a Viking coach to work with in the offseason if you're allowed to do that, or get maybe a list of approved methods to work on and focus on those instead. So, but your point is, and look, of course I'm not anti-QB guru, but maybe just pick a good one. A lot of times that's what guys will do, is they will work with someone. I think Jordan Palmer has done work with Sam Darnold and maybe Josh Allen. I don't know everyone's QB guru. Quincy Avery works with Max Brosmer and has worked with Jalen Hurts and a number of other, those are the guys that get, I think, a lot of the top clients. And usually what happens is you get together with somebody like that and focus on very specific things for an entire offseason. JJ McCarthy was not able to do that last year, and he alluded to that. So that's something he needs to do at the end of this season. But the NFL wheels keep turning. You can't just wait forever for him to come around. You just keep getting 10,000 reps, which is, I always thought was bogus, the whole 10,000 hours thing. But, usually takes more than that, I think. But I don't know. I don't know I know where it comes from. And I read that book and I don't know. Anyway, not the point. So, getting those reps in to make it neurologically work for you or whatever when it comes to rehashing or revamping your throwing motion and your footwork and all that is usually an off-season thing where you're spending morning to night working on that to the point where it's really fused in. And for some people it works, and for some people it does not work. And we don't know which way that's going to go, but the Vikings are going to have high expectations next year, and the pressure is turned up. Because if this season ends up 7-10 for them, that's not where it was supposed to be. And I'm sure goalposts will get moved. I don't set the expectations for this team. The ownership does. And with all the front office does. And with all the movements that they made, this was not where they expected to be. They could say if they want to, which they haven't. I'm not putting words in their mouth, but I don't want to hear at any point this was a development year. It was not. You were supposed to win, and you know that. So I don't want to hear that at any point. And if I do, there's going to be some ranting, I think, because then history will be rewritten. So I would advise them not to do that in public, is to ever move the needle or the goalposts of what the expectations were coming into this season. We all know it was to be in the playoffs. Nobody said McCarthy has to be Joe Montana. I saw that on Twitter. I was like, no one said that. No one said JJ McCarthy had to be Joe Montana. No one ever said he has to be a perfect, flawless, complete product right away. No one said that. But the expectation was that he was going to be supported well enough to work his way through the rocky moments and be in the playoffs. We all know that. So if you miss the playoffs, the pressure gets ramped up tenfold, which means you can't, if it keeps going like this, you can't just say, hey, take your time, get your 10,000 game reps or whatever, and it'll all be fine. That's not how this works. There's too many guys. You can fool them once, but not again when it comes to veteran players and the ownership of how high they're going to set that bar for next year. Next year is you better be in the playoffs, which means you better have, if it doesn't change, you better have somebody else there. So that's the hard part about McCarthy, because he didn't do this to himself. If JJ McCarthy was playing for the Cleveland Browns right now, I mean, they're making excuses for Shadur Sanders looking horrible, but what does it matter? There's no reason to be worried about that. Whether they win or not, who cares? And the Vikings are not in that spot. If he was playing for Tennessee, then they would be or the New York Jets, they would be in a spot to be like, hey, he did some things we liked, and now he's got 3 more years. Even the Chicago Bears, it was like, well, Caleb Williams wasn't very good in year one, and let's see what happens in year two. There's no real discussion. This team, though, needs to have something else if it continues to look like this. And that's why it's hard to develop a young quarterback, because ideally you're like, yeah, 3 years, some guys maybe 4, we'll see. No one's got that long in the NFL. So he's going to have to make some big strides, I think, by the end of this year in order to be in a position where we're saying, okay, he's the guy, be patient. That's got to happen in these next 7 games. Is it fair? Not really, but that's the life in the National Football League. I mean, you can't ask Justin Jefferson to go out there and just have balls flying over his head time and time and time again. You just can't. Not in his prime, not when he expects to go to the Hall of Fame and put his numbers on his, Hall of Fame bust resume and all that sort of thing. And he expects to try to win in the playoffs. He doesn't have a playoff win yet. My God, think about that. How good he's been. He doesn't have a playoff win yet. I mean, you can't, if this doesn't get better, you can't expect him to go into next year with no backup plan, no options like they did this year. Ben says, how would they have known he wasn't ready? He looks good in practice, so they assume, as one would, that it would translate to the games. Yes, that's true. Yes, that's true. I also am not comfortable with just a free pass. If you're 4-6 and your your team quarterback rating is one of the worst in the league, and your defense has been fine, flawed, but fine. Your kicker's been great. Your punter's been great. Your return unit's been good, except for one big mistake and some penalties. But, the point, they've been good enough to win games. And one position has completely sunk your season. I'm not going to make the excuse, well, it's cool because he looked good in practice. I can't do that. Like, that's just not sit with me. Like that, and I saw it, I know he looked good in practice. I believe them. I'm totally understanding of what you're saying. And I'm over there watching practice after practice thinking like this should work. And it hasn't. And when it doesn't, then you didn't do it right. That's the thing that drives me crazy about process versus results, that whole discussion. It's like, well, actually, it is the results that matter. Oh, well, it's the process. Yeah, that's great. The process is great. And I get your process, and I generally agreed with your process somewhat about going over to McCarthy. I had questions, but when they went to McCarthy, I said, well, I thought maybe they'd bring back Sam Darnold, but I thought, well, that means Kevin O'Connell has seen enough with JJ McCarthy, and it's his call, and there it is. And when it doesn't work, it's on him and it's on them. And I'm not a fire people. That would be idiotic to be talking about firing people. But in terms of like, oh, well, they couldn't have seen it coming. I can't do that. I can't give free passes. Not for this. Not when people paid how much money to go and sit in that stadium expecting this team to be in the playoffs. Not when these fans have been this patient with a team that has how many playoff wins since I moved here in 2016? 1. No, wait, 2. 2 playoff wins in the last decade. I'm not going to be like, well, you look good in practice. It's all, not their fault. If it goes wrong, then you should have done something different. So anyway, that none of that is to put it on JJ and say, well, he's a bust and he'll never be good and everything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I didn't agree with the overall direction. I did in general of drafting a quarterback and putting him in to this position. I'm not saying he didn't look good in practice. He did. I think everyone inside the locker room would say he looked good in practice. But if you go 4-6, you didn't do it right. That's how it works. There's no, oh, well, it's okay. He looked good in practice. Well, one thing you could say is Sam Howell was the backup. Probably could have done better than that. Just in case he wasn't ready. So I get a little bit itchy when it comes to that. Now we got our Josh Allen comp. We got a ban. That's banned on the show. No Josh Allen comps. If you give me John Elway, Josh Allen, or Peyton Manning, I'm not reading it. banned from the show. Those are number 1 overall picks, greatest athletes of all time. John Elway won 12 games by his second year. We're out on those comps. Don't make a lick of sense. The Colts were the worst team in the league. This is not the worst team in the league. The Broncos were horrible. This is not the horrible team. This is a good team. Let's see. Josh says his mind is right. He has the physical abilities. It's been 5 games. Not sure how anyone could be out at this point. Well, I don't want to say I'm not sure. I know how you could be out at this point. It's that you watched the game. As Chris Carter said on Twitter, did you watch the 59 minutes? Yeah, I mean, if you watch the 59 minutes, you could be out on JJ McCarthy. I mean, it's not fair to him to call it after 5 games. Of course it's not. But we also can't be like, I didn't see anything. Did you see anything? I mean, when the numbers are what they are, you have to feel like red flags are up. There's no way for me not to. We can't just stick the head in the sand and be like, I don't know, wake me up in the end of 2026. I'm sure this will be okay. When you're talking about performances like this, with this many turnovers, this low of completion percentage, you start to get into a world of comparable quarterbacks where there's not a lot coming back from that. It's sort of like when a team drafts a guy that weighs 140 pounds. You're like, could that work? Yeah, potentially, but what are the odds at some point, right? Reminder about that FanDuel question of the day. The Vikings are 6.5 point underdogs. Would a win get you back into thinking about the playoff race, the season back on? Would it get you fired back up for this team, or are you just, sorry guys, we've gone too far? Kerpluppy, my biggest fear is that JJ is too alike KOC. Pre-draft KOC always mentioned, oh no, that disappeared on me. I got too far behind the comments. To the point about being too alike. No, I mean, I don't think that that's the issue. I could see what you're saying is, okay, they're in a pre-draft meeting and they're just throwing footballs at each other and drawing on whiteboards, and I'm seeing the same things you're seeing, and you seem very coachable, and you're really good with, as a talker, communicator, which McCarthy's really good at. And so maybe you'd favor that versus someone like Bo Nix, who's a little less talkative. Like, I get that. I mean, I think that the draft process of picking McCarthy instead of Nix, I mean, it makes a lot of sense still, even in hindsight, as well as Nix has the Denver Broncos playing. It still makes a lot of sense in hindsight to take the much, much younger player who you feel like his personality clicks with yours. And that's the thing, right? If it was working, then we would probably say, man, look how well they work together. And you know who else sounds like KOC is like a lot of quarterbacks. There's a lot of quarterbacks who are very similar to him. And he's a quarterback himself. They speak the same language. They view things the same way. I think overall it's a positive, but I also think that today was the day where JJ McCarthy kind of acknowledged, yeah, I'm being asked to do a lot of things I've never done before, and it's a struggle. And that's what we're all seeing. And I think living in that reality, as opposed to denying that that's what's happening. I have definitely seen that before, where you not necessarily here, but a quarterback gets asked about, what's happening. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's going fine. It's not my fault. Like, if that's your attitude, that's going to be very tough for a young quarterback to succeed. But in this situation, that's not McCarthy. And I think that he's listening to KOC. And when you hear him talk, you hear a lot of those same coaching points that KOC's bringing up. That's all good to me. That can't be bad. To me, that is a good thing, that he is listening to those coaching points and understanding what's being coached. But it's probably just too much of having to improve on this, and this all at once. If it's just the top of the drops, if it's just the leg whip, if it's just the timing, if it's just the situational awareness and decision-making with the football, if it's just the one throw to the left side in a particular technique or something that he's using, but all of those at the same time fixing them all at once in the middle of a season is really hard to do. By the way, Micah Parsons plays here in this league for the team you're going up against next. That's tough. That is quite tough. All right, let me scroll. I got a little bit behind. I let you guys are great in the comments. You're asking great questions, great comments, but sometimes hard for me to keep up. Try my best. Let's see. Joe says, if KOC knew the issues, why don't you play him in the preseason? KOC failed the organization and fans by knowing he had bad fundamentals. Okay, that's a little aggressive there. I mean, when it comes, look, a lot of guys come into the NFL with fundamentals that need to be changed. That is just the truth. And the plan when they drafted him was to have him work on those last year on the bench and in practice for an entire year. And he was not able to do that. So they had to make a decision. They got to a fork in the road and they had to make a decision. Do you tag Darnold? Do you sign Rodgers? Or do you tell Daniel Jones you're QB1? Because I think Jones, if he knew that, then maybe he would have signed. Although I think he understood if he goes to Indianapolis, he's winning that job because fans were completely out on Anthony Richardson. So, I don't know, maybe whatever. Or even just bring in Joe Flacco or something. Like Joe Flacco in this offense is probably winning a fair number of games. Anybody that would have been more of the ilk of a starting quarterback or with experience before, I mean, if Flacco's the quarterback last week, he throws for 300 yards. Like everything was right there for him. Early in the season, though, you probably would have lost some games with the offensive line situation. But the point just being like they had Sam Howell here, and then they grabbed Carson Wentz at the last minute. And I don't know what you expected. But in terms of the preseason, so my thing on the preseason is I wanted him to play a full half in the preseason. Does that change where he's at now? No, I don't think so. I think in the past, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe you're from that era, we would have seen a young quarterback play a ton in the preseason, but they also would have been playing against 1s and 2s. Now you throw JJ in there against 2s and 3s. Does that do a lot? I mean, maybe a little bit. Does that help a ton? I doubt it. And then the other part is if JJ went and played a bunch in preseason and got hurt, then everyone would have lost their minds and they had no net. That's the other part of it too, is maybe they could have played him in preseason if Sam Howell wasn't the backup, or if they knew that they were going to bring in Carson Wentz. Like those are not real backup options to actually try to compete. So that's another place where I think you could reasonably criticize and say, I mean, to have no legitimate backup here that had any real, I mean, Wentz, I thought was probably as well as you could have done in August. Would have been nicer for him to get the whole offense under his feet if he had the entire offseason, but they just, there was no competition there. You couldn't afford for him to get hurt. And I don't know that preseason was going to change the fate. Now, as far as getting a guy that had fundamental issues, well, there's been a lot of quarterbacks drafted that had fundamental issues. In fact, I can't think of too many who've been drafted who were just flawless. I thought Baker Mayfield fundamentally was really, really good, and he struggled as well early in his career. So I don't think that you can say, oh, well, he had fundamental issues, so you shouldn't have drafted him and you failed the organization. I think what they thought was that they could take these fundamental issues and identify them properly, which I think from KOC's comments, very clearly they did identify them properly. And with the right plan, that they could work with them. And I will say that from the time that he got here until the time he got hurt in 2024, there were very large gains in that area. And that includes the preseason game that he played against the Raiders. There were very big gains. And then you hit the stop sign and went back to square one. And it still was, OTAs, I think, where they decided to say, or somewhere in there, where they decided to say no to Aaron Rodgers. Who knows how that would have ended up playing out here if Rodgers was a Viking, but they had seen at least something there that made them feel better about where the mechanics were headed. And that's the whole practice versus in the games type of thing. The fact that it's happening in practice makes you think it's possible for it to happen in the games with more opportunity. So I don't want to say yet that everything has been a total failure or something like that. Let's see, is that Lori, Lory? What role does KOC, Wes, and Josh have in JJ's development? Maybe they need a new QB coach. I promise you they don't need a new QB coach. They've got, I think, one of the best guys in the world for this assignment, which is Josh McCown. He's been around so many quarterbacks in his time, knows quarterbacking inside and out, and is working hand in hand with Kevin O'Connell when it comes to this. You just can't do much better than this for a coaching staff. That's also how I look at it too. If it was Cam Ward, I'd be like, fire somebody, which they did. But because you don't have people with any real track record, and it's the guys out there drowning, and it's just a huge struggle, and okay, like they just move on and see what you could find for next year to pair him with somebody. Better example probably is Chicago with Eberflus. Like, this guy doesn't know quarterback play. They brought in a coach who decided he was going to try to implement USC's offense, and that was a mess, and all that sort of stuff, right? This is not that group. This is the same group that won 14 games last year with Sam Darnold. So I would not be thinking about, oh, well, it must be the QB coach. And that's what happens when you struggle, is we start looking around for all these different things. Well, what happened in the draft? Well, who was coaching him? What happened? This is actually the hardest part of this whole discussion, is that the answers are really simple. They're right in front of us. McCarthy in the games cannot execute basic stuff that starting NFL quarterbacks get 90% of the time. And he also has done it enough in practice for them to think that he can. And we've only seen 5 games of it. So we wait and we find out if he can or not. And some of us do podcasts every single day. So we, try to break down as best as we can with some patience, but we're going to look at every single game through the lens of, did you get closer or farther away or the same to that spot of where you need to be when it comes to those basic NFL quarterback things? Kurt says, I have a feeling that when it clicks, it's going to click to be mid-great production. I still have a lot of hope. Yeah, I mean, that's the point, I think, overall, is that we don't know if it's going to click. And if it does, we've seen the flash stuff that he's able to do with his athleticism, with his ability to run the ball, with his ability to even layer a ball into the back of the end zone for Jalen Naylor, or drop one in 60-something yards down the field, or hit into a tight window like he did on that throw over the middle to Justin Jefferson. I don't know if it was really a tight window necessarily, but it was a tight coverage, and he made a really good throw there. I mean, you've seen those things that you can circle on the tape and go, hey, this is it. But does it get more consistent? That's the thing that we just won't really know. KFT wondering if McCarthy's hand played a part in his accuracy when he hit the helmet against the Ravens. Going forward, it hasn't been good. I don't know. Guys hit their hands on helmets. Like, I don't know. I can't say that, because I didn't think he was accurate against Chicago the first time, or against Atlanta, or really against Detroit. I mean, there were some plays where he was, and some plays where he was super erratic. I think maybe, but I didn't see that as really the problem. Is even the actual throw. It was, you could identify so clearly where the technical problems were on the tape that it didn't look like it was the hand. It looks like it's the feet. The timing to me is something that anybody can see. Footwork, that might be a little out of my depth sometimes, unless it's obvious. Sometimes it is. Timing, though. Timing, anybody can see. Just that you've seen Kirk throw 50 passes this way. You've seen Darnold throw 50 passes this way. We saw Nick Mullins throw 50 passes this way. A guy comes out of his break. He's almost out of it. Carson Wentz hit a bunch of these throws. The ball goes up in the air. The guy hits his break. It lands in his hands. I mean, those are the ones that are the straightforward. Everybody knows that's when the ball is supposed to come out, and it's not coming out. So I don't think that has a lot to do with the hand. KFC says Tom Brady said that when the ball still sails, it's from his hand coming forward, and that message deleted on me. Yeah, well, I like when it comes to just even if we look at the way Tom Brady threw the football, shoulders were usually square to his target. Not always the case with McCarthy. The stride, actually, Tom Brady could overstride sometimes, but the stride was pretty short for Tom Brady, and we're seeing a very long stride. But the biggest thing for him, for Brady, when he became really great, was those anticipation type of throws. And that's something that does take a lot of time, the anticipation throws. So Digits says the mechanics and touch will take another year. This was known at the draft. It was known at the draft, but I also think that the expectation when you get drafted is that it gets better. Just because it was known at the draft doesn't mean it's going to improve. It means that it's going to make or break you. That's what it really is. I mean, this was Mahomes. When Mahomes came out, it was either the footwork, which was really poor at Texas Tech, was going to make or break him. He was either going to fix it and figure it out and learn how to play in the structure, or he was going to fail. And he learned how to play in the structure and succeeded. But that was why he wasn't the number 1 overall pick, is because his footworks and mechanics were really messy, and he fixed it. Maverick says the Vikings need to stop trying to save money at the quarterback position. Who gives a F about the rookie scale contract? That would be me. That was kind of my thing for many years. Did you notice they didn't win with decent quarterback play that was very expensive? It's the right plan. The right plan the whole time was to draft a quarterback and build this roster. And now that you've seen it healthy, I think it's very evident how good this roster actually is. The O-line is fantastic. The D-line's been improving. Allen and Hargrave, I think once they figured some things out there, have been a lot better. Van Ginkel comes back. They're fantastic. Cashman comes back. They're fantastic. Like, it's a really good roster that you could win with average quarterback play. Their bet was that they would have average quarterback play, and they haven't. It's really not that complicated. Paying a gazillion dollars at the quarterback position restricts that. Now, I think the conversation might be different if you were talking about a 1-year franchise tag for Sam Darnold. Now, that's different because then if you want to sign people, you could kick money further down the road and fit in a franchise tag the way you structured some of the contracts. You could do that, and I can also find you $41 million that they spent this offseason on guys who have not performed to the level that they expected. So, but in terms of like the idea, the plan has worked so many times in the NFL. This was the right way to go from the minute they got here, but it's not working right now. It's also not over. The entire thing is not over yet. For me, the entire thing is over probably next year. If they don't make this work next year, then this group will get broken up to some extent. I mean, you're still going to have Darisaw and you're still going to have Jefferson in their prime, but trying to look 3 years from now, Donovan Jackson, who's been very good, Will Fries, but trying to look 3 years from now is almost impossible. But for 2 years, this was the window that they created. And so far, they are 0 for 1, but I don't think we could declare it after 10 games of the first part of the window. All right, let's see. I mean, KFT, I did ban the use of Peyton Manning and Josh Allen, for examples. I didn't ban the use of Brad Johnson, but Brad Johnson is a pretty bad example to try to compare JJ McCarthy because, first of all, he was a basketball player in college. Second of all, he was like a 9th round draft pick or something, and he got all sorts of time to develop behind other quarterbacks just in a totally different era. The problem with trying to use examples, I would actually suggest not doing it. Just don't do it. Just don't try, because the problem is that for every one guy who took massive accuracy issues and turned them around, there's 15 guys that didn't. So that's a hard road to go down. The road that you have to go down is this guy in particular. When you hear him talk about what he needs to do, when you hear the self-awareness, the self-assessment, that he goes into practice and he gets it. And these are the things that he has to do in order to get there. And each week when he goes out there, he's going to be focused on those. And they're in his head of don't try to do too much, 80% on the football, high posture, situational awareness. And if he knows all those things and he's aware of them and he's got the raw skills to be really good, that eventually it'll start to come together. That's what you have to hope for, because the comps right now are not good and not good. So you can reach for whoever you want to reach for if you want, but that's a losing game, I think, overall, especially when you have a situation around him that is like this. Jack says you'd rather go 5-12 than 7-10. The hard part about that is that if you go 5-12, well, look, actually, let's work our way through this. Let me give you the FanDuel question of the day to those who may be just joining, which is the Vikings are 6.5-point underdogs to Green Bay. Would a win in Green Bay bring you back to the Minnesota Vikings of 2025? Would it make you buy in again to the chance of them turning this season around? Let's work through this. It's an interesting comment. Would you rather go 5-12 or 7-10? If you go 5-12, it means JJ McCarthy was horrible. In that outcome, you know that you cannot go into next season with him locked in as your starting quarterback. He could be in a competition, but he cannot be, that's Anthony Richardson, that's Trey Lance territory, that's Josh Rosen territory, where it's so poor that you just need to be looking for other options this offseason. It probably means a lot of other people didn't play that well, which is not great. It probably, if there's injuries or the defense struggles, but those things can be dealt with. The quarterback position, nothing is more important than that. That would give you a lot of clarity if they were 5-12. It would make it crystal clear that you need to be looking for another quarterback, and then that's what they're on the market for, and we see what happens from there. If they go 7-10, what it really depends on is how it looks, because that means 3-4 the rest of the way. I think 7-10 comes with asterisks. There's no way you could go 5-12 and only win one game the rest of the way and your quarterback was decent. That means he was horrible and you know what you're going to do. If you were talking about them going 7-10 in a scenario where they lose some close games, let's say it's a shootout against the Cowboys, it's a shootout against Detroit, and you lose 34-31. And in the last game of the season, you fall to Green Bay 27-24. JJ McCarthy goes for 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, runs for 40 more yards, looks really good. Well, then that's still a good outcome to go. Yeah, it drops you in the draft, but who cares? Your quarterback looks like he's your guy, even if he lost some close games toward the end. If you're 7-10, and the only reason you get there is that you pick off, I don't know, Jameis Winston 5 times and you win in New York and you get a game-winning field goal to win 14-13 against, that would be an interesting situation, but let's just say it, 14-13 against the Packers. I mean, then where are you at? You're like, okay, some good things, some bad things from McCarthy, mostly just the turnover luck changed in the middle of the season, and mostly the defense was good, but he had this game and but he had that game. And then you're having the same conversations that they had during, Christian Ponder. So a 7-10 would have to really depend on how it actually looked. Jack, I guess KOC isn't a quarterback guru. I think you guys should all appreciate how much you've learned about quarterback play from KOC this year. I've said it a million times. Kevin O'Connell knows as much about quarterback play and thinks as much about quarterback play and has been in worlds that you guys, us, don't even sniff the air of. Just, friends with Tom Brady, just for example, right? I think it's the first thing that he thinks of when he wakes up. I think it's the last thing when he goes to bed. I think it's the thing that he talks with most people about. He is in that universe that is in the 99.99999 percentile of understanding this position. But he is not a miracle worker. It's just like doctors. they understand biology way better than you do. But if you're not going to make it, you're not going to make it. That's how it is with the quarterback. I think that no one's going to give him a better chance than Kevin O'Connell. But I went through this in one of my articles. Bill Walsh, the all-time quarterback whisperer, drafted Jim Druckenmiller. And the guy who named his book Quarterback Whisperer left out Tim Couch. And he coached Tim Couch, left him out of the book. Weird. He included Carson Palmer. He included Andrew Luck, but he didn't include Tim Couch. That's interesting. Nobody's a miracle worker. Kyle Shanahan drafted Trey Lance, not a miracle worker. Doesn't work that way. There's only so much you could do. And I think now, this is where I got to today. I got to this point today. And I want to get to more of your comments. I do. I know what happens to me. I get a good comment and then just run away with it. I got to a point today where I felt like this. Kevin O'Connell, Josh McCown, the offense, the players, the linemen, the defense, they've given JJ McCarthy everything he needs. And it is entirely up to him whether he takes the ball from here and becomes a good quarterback or whether he does not. And it is really unfortunate that there is so much pressure to do so in 7 games the rest of the way and show that he could be the guy, or in 2 years, which is probably what you really get in the NFL to show your first franchise. And if it takes any longer than this year and next offseason, then you're probably talking about him playing for another football team. That is the unfortunate reality of how this thing has to work, but it's really on his shoulders. You either are going to make it or you're not. You've got all the tools to work with here. You've been given all the training lessons. We have sat there through the classes that Kevin O'Connell has put on about here is how a quarterback is supposed to throw the football. Here is how it's supposed to happen. Here is when it's supposed to happen. Here is the posture you're supposed to have. Here is the eyes you're supposed to have. And here is the decisions you're supposed to make and all those things. And he has laid it out for us. It's on one guy, whether it's going to click or not. And none of us really know right now. But that's where I got to today. There's no more, well, what if he schemed this? Or what if Justin School wasn't playing? Or what if they traded, got rid of their quarterbacks coach? No, not anymore. Not anymore. We've seen every different iteration and scenario. Now it's on to the next 7 games and whether you can actually get there or not. I shot you 99. I know this is a little unrelated, but Shadur Sanders never got first team reps as a backup. Is that normal? Is Brosmer getting first team reps? No, Brosmer is not getting first team reps. And yes, that is a gazillion % normal. Yep. Every backup quarterback and one of my very good friends, Sage Rosenfels, who gets shouted out on this show all the time. I learned so much from him about quarterback play. Sage was a backup for most of his career. Nope. You do not get first team reps. I mean, every once in a while, but not like half of them or a ton of them. It's going to depend by the team. I'm sure if it was Joe Flacco as the starter, if they had a young quarterback they were trying to develop, they would mix him in. But most likely, no, you're not getting those starting reps. And the quarterback that's the backup is working with the scout team. So what Max Brosmer is doing is he is taking in the opposing team's offense and trying to learn their offense so he can give the defense a look at what their concepts are. So let's say, hey, this is a team that loves to run, double slants or something. We'll just make up whatever. This team loves running double slants on third downs. So we're going to practice that. So Max Brosmer has to come in, and that week he has to learn, oh, they love to run double slants. We're going to practice this a lot. Here's the key core concepts to that play, and you have to learn them, and you're going to show the defense. And that's what you're doing for most of the practice. You're not going over and taking first team reps with Justin Jefferson. The first time you talk to Justin Jefferson would be in the huddle when you win in the game. But if you are a great backup quarterback, what you're doing is you are also learning, and you have to, obviously, but you're learning inside and out your own game plan. And you are taking the mental reps when you watch the tape back, because they get all the tape of the practice, so they could go back and watch the starting quarterback take all those plays and you got your reps when it came to training camp. And so you are prepared to go when you get out there. There is no excuse for Shedeur Sanders. Every backup quarterback who's ever had to come in the game has had to go in there without a bunch of first team reps during practice. And Sage one time came back from down 21 points as a Miami Dolphin to beat the Bills. It is possible. Shedeur is also a 5th round quarterback who is a rookie, and I think the expectations for him were just grotesquely high because his name is Sanders, and the media people who yell about stuff know that his name moves the needle. I think it's unfair to him a little bit. It's a little bit of the bet he made. He didn't look very prepared to me. That's on him to be prepared. But no, Brosmer's not getting first team reps. And if he becomes the starter, then he will. Weird controversy to me, though. Weird controversy. Just kind of there's people who, and this goes for McCarthy, goes for every quarterback. This happened a lot with Kirk, where no matter what happens, it's not their fault. And this is not one of those shows. This is not one of those shows. Mavericks signed Mac Jones in the offseason. His stats are great this year. Mac is not a free agent. So that is the hard part about it, is Mac is under contract with San Francisco. He does have good numbers this year. In terms of PFF, he's 11th best quarterback by PFF. We do know that system is very helpful, but also Darnold was good there. Darnold was good here. So there, it's probably a crossover. So, I think that there is no better option that I can find than Mac Jones, but it would require them trading something over there. And I guess that will be really dependent on how they feel about McCarthy. If you have to, because there will be other offers for Mac Jones to the 49ers. If you have to trade something fairly significant to get Mac Jones, if they do that, it tells you everything you need to know. But I'm guessing that we'll already know everything we need to know by the end of this season of where it stands. Aaron says, too early to tell. McCarthy's only played 5 games. It's bad. Let's give it a few years. I can't give it a few years. There's just not a few years to give. That's the problem, right? There's just not a few years to give. In a theoretical ideal world, what you would do is you would take this roster and you'd freeze it. And you'd say, JJ, you'd freeze them in time. Play with these guys a bunch of games, 30 games, and just keep getting better and keep getting better. And no one age. Turn injuries off, turn age off, keep resetting the system. Can you do that still? Keep hitting the reset button, and Justin Jefferson stays 26 years old forever. You can't do that. There's only so many years you get Justin Jefferson on your team in his prime. So you have to make decisions based on timelines. If you could get, it would be great. Look, I was watching a thing on Warren Moon the other day, and this is just how unfair the situation is. I was watching a thing on Warren Moon. He went to the CFL first, and he won like 5 championships or something absurd in the CFL before he ever came to the NFL. And even then, it wasn't right away that he was the megastar. It took some time. For a guy who had played in the CFL, how about the USFL, Jim Kelly? I think he came into the NFL at 26 years old. How about Kurt Warner? Played in a bunch of different places, practice squads, and Iowa Barnstormers or something. I mean, whatever it was. And then he comes into the NFL, I think at 27? Steve Young, USFL, Tampa Bay Bucks, gets to San Francisco. He's the backup for a while. There's so many examples of this, and if only you had the time to do it. But they really don't with this situation. Now, in a different world, if you kind of knew where this was going to be at, that's why you would try to have someone else be the starting quarterback for this year. I also think that situation is not as realistic as even you could talk about, because if you had another quarterback here and they struggled at all through this season with all the early season injuries, then the pressure is going to ramp up there to put in McCarthy. So, I mean, I think that would have, now, of course you can't let, the pressure make decisions for you, but that comes from all places. That might come from up top. That might come from the front office. That might come like, all right, okay, well, when are you going to get the kid in there? Everyone wants to see the kid. Everybody loved this decision to move on from Sam Darnold after he struggled in the playoff game. And now it's like, wait a minute, what were they doing? Well, I think at the time they probably had some of the same reaction as you, but they also thought we better get to finding out. We better get to finding out, because if you don't and you franchise tag Darnold, let him go after this year, and then turn it over to JJ next year, and it doesn't go well, then, that's a different world. That if he wasn't ready then, what are you looking at? Then you're looking at wasting the whole thing. At least now, I don't think the whole thing's been wasted. I just think the first 10 games of it have not produced what it was supposed to, but it's not like everybody has to retire after next year. My point is, JJ McCarthy, if he had 5 years, this is the hard part about being him. It's the unfair, unfortunate truth is that you just don't have that long. That doesn't mean he has to retire and his career someday might not work out if he struggles the rest of the season, but it means the franchise has to do what they've got to do. They're just too good. They've got to look at other positions or other players because of the position that they're in. So anyway, let's see. Mayfield, like Darnold, play for horrible teams. McCarthy hasn't experienced that. Well, right. That's the thing, is that's why I'm sort of like, let's just ban the comparisons, because they're hard to make work. Any of the comparisons are hard to make work. If someone gives me a really good one, we'll go with it, but I'm having trouble finding one that's similar enough to this where it works out, because like you said, Mayfield, when he had a good team, won a playoff game and was very close to winning another one. He was really close to beating Kansas City. Chad freaking Henne had to convert a 4th down in order for Mayfield not to have another playoff win in Cleveland. So he was, and by his second year, he was pretty good. So it's not like he never showed anything. John, who gives a crap about his age? Who are we talking about here? Are we talking about Brosmer? Oh, okay. Yeah, John advocating for Brosmer about the age. Look, you're not going to get me to say a bad thing about Max Brosmer. I've been so impressed. But JJ McCarthy, the tools that he possesses is the stuff of a franchise level quarterback. And you got to find out whether you can bring that all together and have him play like a franchise level quarterback. With Brosmer, the physical tools are not of the same level. Now that doesn't mean he can't someday be a starting quarterback and be good in this league. There have, the purple Purdy people, but again, with comps, like, good luck finding too many more of that. But I like Brosmer as much as everybody. I think that he could be a quarterback in the NFL for a long time, but you've got to see with McCarthy, because if it clicks, that athleticism, that arm talent, it puts him in an echelon that is different, that is with the better quarterbacks in the league. He has the tools that match up with top guys. He has to bring them together. And unfortunately for him, he's got to bring it together pretty fast. Let's see. NTV, are you giving him 30 games? I don't think look, I'd love to give him 5 years. I'm not the one giving. I'm not the one giving the games. It's the people who are upstairs that own a lot of stuff, and that includes the Minnesota Vikings, that can't sit here and write checks at this level for players like Darisaw and Jefferson and Grenard and Van Ginkel. Van Ginkel's 31 years old, and Jefferson, he's going to be good for a long time, but you can't. 30 games is like 2 full seasons. I don't know if you could give him that many. When he missed 5 this year already. So when is 30 games? It's like the end of next year if he plays every game. Is it? Oh, let's see. If he played the rest this year, it would add up to 12. And then, it's 29. The end of next year. I don't think you could do that. If you get to the end of this year and they go 5-12, then you got to look at quarterback competition for next year in training camp. You're already there. Because even though, yes, he gets the excuse of missing the time, the explanation of missing the time, it's also year 3 already. And this is the year you timed out to have this really good roster. Also, hey, by the way, there's a number of teams who have won a lot of games without great quarterback play this year. San Francisco is one of them. Good quarterback play, great defense, good weapons. Bo Nix is one of them. Some people act like Knicks has been horrible this year or something. I don't see that. 14th by PFF. But Indianapolis, I mean, Daniel Jones has been really good, but he's 18th by PFF, 15 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's got more turnover-worthy plays than big-time throws, but his team is great. This is happening around the league where you've got pretty okay players who are leading teams to a lot of wins because of the roster and because no one is just crushing the rest of the league. I mean, Jalen Hurts, has he been good this year? Where's he? He must be way down there. Jalen Hurts hasn't been good. They're winning games with a great defense. I don't think Goff's had a great season. It's good, but it's not MVP level. So 30 games is tough to give. I think you give the next 7 games and then you decide on a fork in the road. You either go the direction of competition, other options, and you're not getting rid of him, or you're going to the direction of, hey, he's our guy. And those are the options. 30 games would be fair, but it's not a fair world, unfortunately. Yeah, we're still trying Josh Allen comps. Just going to move on from that. It just doesn't make. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Now we're just getting sad. Same as Brad Johnson. Yep, 25 years ago. Come on, guys. Yep, that's tough. That's tough when we're getting to the extreme outliers. The thing is, though, that Brad Johnson is way the hell better than what we're seeing here. This isn't even close to Brad Johnson. I mean, this isn't starting level play. It's not even close. This is closer right now. I don't mean to be insulting. The facts are the facts. This is closer to Jimmy Clausen than it is Brad Johnson. That's just the facts of 5 games. Doesn't mean it needs to go that way, but like we got to be realistic here when we're trying to make the comparisons about what, they need. But your point about, Brad Johnson or Trent Dilfer is probably valid if we're looking at for next year. Where do you set the bar? Like, what does he need to be? What does he need to convince you he needs to be? It's not perfect. That's a good question, is like, how good does it need to be by the end of this 7 games? I mean, much better than it is now. Enormous gains to get to that point, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Out of 7 games the rest of the way, in order to not bring in somebody else, you'd need like 6 of them to be great. In order to bring in somebody else to compete with him, but still leaning JJ McCarthy, is probably 4 really good games with major technical improvements. But if it's 2 good games, I know that he won in Detroit and I thought he played well in a lot of ways, but there hasn't been a good game yet. Not by true NFL standards. There hasn't been a 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 120 quarterback rating, 24-10 win. There hasn't been one of those in 5 games. So that makes it pretty tough to sit here and say, oh, well, he could just get to average pretty quickly. That's hard to do. But maybe you guys were talking about, something else in there too. So anyway, does anybody want to talk about my upcoming Donovan Jackson article? Probably not. But I am impressed with Donovan Jackson. That's one of the things about this season that is now hard. Is it's going to feel like talking about anything else on the team, talking about the matchup. They play the Packers this week. You guys thinking about the Packers? Like it feels like everything now is funneled toward one person because it's so important to what happens next. And that makes sometimes these weeks are going to be filled with a lot of JJ McCarthy talk. So that's why every week is going to be a new amount of information, and we'll see what we come up with after this game in Green Bay. Thank you so much, John, for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Says, thank you for vocalizing that the Vikings are expected to win with McCarthy and that anything else is a lie. Honestly, that goes a long way. Well, I mean, in this offseason, the way that they acted, there was not a whole lot of, hey guys, this could be a slow progression type of year. That was last year. And I think we all accepted that that was last year. They weren't supposed to win 14 games, but if they had won 7 with Darnold and McCarthy was developing behind him and then came in at the end of the year and didn't play well, we'd be like, fine. That's fine. Last year was the development year, not this year. That doesn't mean that this is the only year, though. There we go. Donovan is the best draft pick they've made under Kwesi. There we go. A comment about something else. Thank you. Who is this? T6. I salute you. So impressed with Donovan Jackson. You want to know what I talked about with him? This is what we'll end the show on. I had a really good conversation with Donovan about his personality and how he, I think, really enjoys the learning process and of going back through what worked and what didn't work and building on that. And so what we were talking about was how when you look at mistakes that you make on tape, he said that he'll see some plays he makes and go, hey, that man, that's not me. I got to be better than that. I got to fix that. And he's been very, very good. KOC said this about him today. Very, very good at taking anything that he needs to correct and just fixing it and fixing it and fixing it. And that's what the great offensive linemen are. I kind of made a joke to Brian O'Neill today after I was done interviewing him, like, a lot going on up there in the offensive line. So much technique, so many different looks, so many types of different players. And it takes a really long time for a young offensive lineman to just see those things, right? But if you have this intellectual approach, which, let me tell you, don't ever talk trash to an offensive lineman. They're usually the most clever guys up there on the field. Like, these are the smartest guys in the NFL a lot of times because, and they're also the biggest and the scariest sometimes. But they're usually like the brightest guys because they have to see so many things and they have to have so many techniques and they have to understand all the things that are going on the field, all the things about defense. I swear some of these offensive linemen could coach defense because they know so much about it. They might know more about it than some defensive coaches. It's because they have to understand everything that's going on over there in order to do their jobs, which requires a studier's type of approach. And Donovan Jackson is that kind of guy. And I also asked him, he had a very interesting question, or a very interesting answer to my question. I asked Donovan, and this article is going to come out, purpleinsider.football, a little later this week. And I asked him about, he's a very friendly person. He's very polite, very nice to deal with. I mean, great guy to talk with. And I said, Donovan, you seem pretty nice. Like your tape's not nice though. Like you're nasty. You're knocking people over. You're playing super physical. I'm like, is there a light that goes on or like, what is that? He had a great answer to this. Might be the best answer I've ever heard to this. Cause I set him up with an easy, he could say, oh, I'm a different guy when I go out there. I go crazy. Like, but that's not what he said. He said that if you do it right technically and you play the way you're supposed to be coached to play, so you're using your hands aggressively, violently, and you're in the right position to use them like that and to create power, it'll look like you're nasty out there and you're finishing blocks the way you're supposed to. It will look like you're taking your game to a different level of violence when you're really just doing it the right way. And I was like, that is a very interesting answer, my friend. So he said, I'm not a crazy person. I'm just trying to do it right. So that's paraphrasing, but that's kind of what he said. I've been so impressed with Donovan. So impressed with him. There's going to be some tough games coming up here. Holy cow. The Seahawks interior D-line, they got monsters. There's beasts on the way. Detroit's got some beasts, but this is a dude that I think is really built for this, Donovan Jackson. And, that whole wrist thing, that was tough too, but you got to be a fighter up there as well through pain and stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's a good draft pick for them. And the way that he's developing could be a great draft pick for them. But I think that's the one thing, his personality plays big into it. And to tie it all back to McCarthy, we heard from him today, being aware of what you need to fix and change is a big step. And that was kind of my main takeaway from today. So tomorrow, Ben Gessling will be on the show. This is going to run on the YouTube page and on the podcast tomorrow morning. Ben Gessling, Maggie Robinson's got her rundown. We had to readjust her timing for this week because she's actually doing really, really well in her grad program. So we had to readjust for great reasons. And let's see, we got Manny Hill picking the schedule. That will be interesting. And then our Friday hardcore breakdown with Andrew Kramer. So a lot still to come on the show. I really appreciate the respectful chat. I think you guys in this world, in this Purple Insider little space, have done a phenomenal job in my chat of being reasonable, sharing your opinions and viewpoints and asking good questions and things like that. I know social media can be a horror show, especially if you're a QB guru, but a lot of you, unlike that fella, were able to contain yourselves and offer some really good stuff for tonight. So thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Makes this job a lot more fun when I know that things in Vikings universe could not be described presently as fun. So thanks for that. And go over to purpleinsider.football. I'll have that Donovan Jackson article coming pretty soon, a little later in the week. Got to work on it. And some thoughts on JJ McCarthy and what he had to say today. And we'll go from there. So thanks again, everybody, for popping in. And we will catch y'all later. Football.